Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Back, Hawkeye fans, to another episode of Punting is Winning, the All Iowa podcast. We are your hosts. That's JD. I'm Keith. Welcome back to another week of Iowa athletics, Hawkeye sports, however you want to look at it. Changed up the format a little bit this week. Let's see how this works going forward. Going to start out with the question of the week from last week, which was, who is Iowa, in your opinion, who is Iowa's most hated football rival in conference? And several people responded. Seems like the overall majority was Nebraska kind of comes in off the top, and followed by Minnesota and probably Wisconsin. But I know you've got a little bit different take on that. What's your thought?
Well, I agree with the Minnesota and Nebraska, but I also threw in Illinois. There's been a very heated rivalry between Iowa and Illinois for years and years and years, and I was in the middle of that when I was growing up. And I've kind of always despised Illinois for whatever reason. Now, some of that might have been because of basketball, but I just carried it over into football and just they've had a little bit. I little disdain for Illinois that over the years, so that's kind of the reasoning behind it. There are several others that I could probably put in. You know, if I was to make a top 18, I think probably Illinois, Nebraska, and Minnesota would be the top three, and then I'd probably go with Wisconsin after that, and then on down the line. I'm not going to go through it all, but each one of them, I suppose I have a reason for. Some of them I don't really care because we haven't lost to them in forever, so they're just kind of fodder for the next win.
I've got a little bit different take on that. I think of things that either that other team has done or has ways that they've broke my heart somehow. And so I can't really throw Nebraska in there because they don't break your heart because they don't win. Same with the Minnesota. You could throw Wisconsin in there because Wisconsin's beaten Iowa a few times where it's kind of really mattered. Not a ton, but they have. But I think for me, it's Michigan State because that's the Big Ten championship game that we were in. I don't want to say Michigan just because we were never in those games, really. And then I think number two for me would be Penn State just because of their arrogance.
Well, yeah, that and the fact they were faking injuries there. That about 3 or 4 years ago, every other time you turn around, somebody was laying on the field, and then they'd get up and run off the field and be back in to play after.
Yes. Yeah,
that's weak.
And I think the fan base has kind of got a little bit of arrogance to them of they're better. They're kind of like, it's kind of like Nebraska fans in the 90s. And still today, I mean, they still have the arrogance about them, but they're a little more quiet because they're not, a lot of people have shut them up more.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State, not a lot of people have shut them up recently, so they're getting a little bit louder again. So that's the reason why I put those two at the top for me. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Minnesota, if it became a rivalry, it'd probably be back up on top. But, when you only win once every decade, it's hard to call it a rivalry.
Yeah, but
that's
that was
why I don't
only
consider
the question.
Iowa and Michigan or Iowa and Ohio State rivalries because Iowa didn't beat them enough to have it be a real rivalry.
Right. But it was just personal for me. It was more of a who do I despise in the Big Ten, just because of things that has happened in the past. And I could go through and list a bunch of things that each one of the teams, probably barring the last 4 teams, I don't really know anything about them. They haven't really been in the conference long enough for me to really draw out anything and say that I really hate them for that reason or despise them for that reason. But I could take the other 14 teams probably and figure out something that I would despise about them. But
I could think of something. I could think of something for all the new teams with the exception of Oregon. I just think of Rose Bowls and Orange Bowl, and that just aggravates me. And again, it comes down to arrogance of the fan base and arrogance of the university. To me, that kind of rubs me wrong. I mean, USC always feels like they're superior to everybody too. UCLA used to be that way, not near as much now. And Washington really doesn't irk me or rub me the wrong way. It's just more of I just remember those Rose Bowl games that Iowa got beat, and it just kind of I hate it. So nothing personal with them. So anyway, so this week, let's throw our question of the week in early and get that out of the way. You say you have one, right?
I do.
Okay.
This is more of a call your shot. Why don't you, if you would put your answer down, and then we'll go back at the end of the seasons and we'll find out who was right and who was way off. But here's the question. I'm just going to add it right now. Who will have a better winning percentage, Iowa football team or the Iowa men's basketball team this season? And this is over all games. So if Iowa would make a bowl game, that counts. If Iowa would make the NCAA tournament or whatever other tournament that they would make it to.
Final record regardless.
Final record regardless, percentage, winning percentage. So which would it be?
I feel like it's it's one of those situations where I think that it's easier for the football team to have a better winning percentage just because they play less games. And, all they have to do is, if they win 7 out of 12, that's, you've got to you got to be a little bit better on the basketball court and have a little bit difference in your win-loss margin there. But still, yeah, good question.
Well, if you go on a 3 or 4 game losing streak of games you think you probably could have won or should have won, that can really throw you down too. And then that would make it much easier for the basketball team to excel and win that situation. But,
Oh yeah.
With only having maybe, if Iowa would happen to play a bowl game, and maybe even if they were good enough to even play in the Big Ten championship game, which I don't see happening. So let's say they play 13 games and the men's team plays 33 or 32 or 31, whatever it is. So you've got a little bit more leeway if you lose a game versus where the basketball team, if they, the football team, if you lose a game, it really hurts you because you've got limited games.
Yeah. It's a sword that cuts both ways.
Yes.
You go 8-4, that's 66%. And that means if you're playing, say for the sake of easy math, 33 games, you've got to win 22 of those 33 to match.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, so if you win 20 and you 33 and you go 20-13, you still make the tournament. Maybe you lose, or you win a game and you lose a game. You're still not going to make it. That's why I think it's easier if the football team has their par season like they normally have. So anyway,
you want to talk about spring football a little bit?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the football team.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say that you and I are going to try to go to the spring open practice on the 26th of April. Now, I'll let you know that is it starts at 10:45, but gates open at 9:45. So all of you that are contemplating going and don't know the pertinence to that, that's information that's important. You could be there at 9:45 and maybe catch some early stuff going on. But actual practice starts at 10:45. So, big news this week, Brendan Sullivan enters the transfer portal. That would then move probably Hank Brown to number 2. I'm just assuming that. I would think he's been shining in practice, but not sure.
You've got Jackson Stratton, who's got an extra year in the program. So I've not heard that that's the case where he's ahead of him or anything, but I would assume that's Hank Brown. But there is always the chance that because of Stratton's got that extra year in there, that he might be ahead of him at this point. I don't know.
Right.
I think when all the gold shakes out of the pan, it's going to be Gronowski and then Brown.
Yeah.
At the end of the start of fall camps or fall games.
And then probably you've got your new people are going to be Jimmy Sullivan would be new. He's a high school freshman, or will be a high school. He'll be a freshman this year at college. And then you've got Fitzgerald's kid, Ryan, is it? I think Ryan.
Yes.
And then Jackson Stratton, we talked.
I would almost feel like Jackson Stratton's probably going to be number 3 going into the first game of the season.
Just based on his experience from last year, probably.
And I'm hoping that first game of the season he gets some playing time too.
I'd like to see all the guys, especially the first game. If it's kind of a runaway, Iowa gets up 40-10 or something like that. I'd like to see Brown get in there. I'd like to see Stratton get in there. I'd like to see everybody just get some experience. It's only going to pay dividends going down the line. There's no sense in getting Gronowski hurt late in the game.
Right.
pull him out, let him get ready for the next game, Iowa State. Let the other guys mop up the game and finish it, and don't restrict the playbook on them either. You know, these kids are out there; they're running through practice, they're playing hard in practice, and there's no sense in stripping the playbook away from them and saying, "Yeah, just hand the ball off." I don't think that's fair to them. Let them shine.
What I'd like to see is a situation where, say, Iowa gets up, like 31-0 at the half, and unless you feel like you need Gronowski to stay in there for the conditioning, the reps, whatever, to shake the more rust off, whatever the case may be, I'd like to see, that be the case. Then you throw in Hank Brown to start the second half. You can always go back to him.
Yeah,
it's not like you can't.
Right.
And if you're a good enough team, you shouldn't have to go back to him against Albany.
I would think not.
So then you've got a chance to give, Hank Brown's got a chance to come in there and run the actual offense. You might sprinkle in some second-team guys on the offensive line, but you still got some first-team guys that you probably want to keep in there just to get some more game experience. And you just let them do what's normal. I agree with you. A lot of times when you're seeing the backups go in, especially at Iowa over the years, in blowout situations, it's just to come in. Quarterbacks basically come in and hand off the ball. Well, okay, you got your steps right for your handoff. That doesn't help you with timing for receivers or anything. So now if somebody gets hurt, you don't have that extra little bit. And I don't know how much that helps. I've never played the position of quarterback, so I don't know if it's, really that beneficial, but it has to be. I'd feel it has to be, just to have that game experience and that speed of the game, as opposed to, I know what the defense is doing here because I've seen this 100 times in practice. And they know exactly what I'm doing too.
Yeah.
So, I'd agree.
Well, speaking of
Gronowski,
he is ahead of schedule from all reports. He's only taken a few snaps, but never actually getting any line of fire from the defense. So he's staying kind of like with a zone around him. Don't touch him anywhere near the zone.
Basically in bubble wrap.
Yeah, I look for him to start throwing in June when he's 100% cleared by the medical staff. I've been hearing a few things about Nathan McNeil, the freshman coming in. I believe he's out of Florida.
He's the JUCO out of Florida, right?
No, I don't think I think he's a freshman, true freshman. Anyway, from what I'm hearing, he's turning some heads, and people are starting to see him, what he can really do, which is great. You need to see that, with higher speed competition. Iowa's defense usually pretty decent. So if he can make those guys look kind of bad at times, then, that's only the better for us as a Hawkeye fan base, because we're probably going to see Jazzy and Patterson and Kamari Moulton mostly. But, like you said earlier, getting guys in a blowout, let this guy play a little bit. He's got 4 games before he needs to redshirt. I'd say let him. You never know. You could get 2 guys hurt immediately, and there's your guy coming up. And if he doesn't have any experience, you're going to notice it right away until he gets his feet wet.
I think that's, and I don't want to jinx it because we've seen it before, but I think that's a position of definitely a position of strength for the offense this year is the running back room. And I think that the quarterback room is a bigger position of strength than it was over the past few years.
Oh, obviously. Absolutely. No
and I think the wide receiver room is in the same boat. I think there's better quality athletes. There's better talent there. We didn't get a chance to really see it as much last year because new offense, rotation of quarterbacks with injuries, whatnot. Hard to get any type of a rhythm, but I think you're going to see a difference this year. One guy that I have heard has been turning heads is KJ Parker.
Yeah.
At wide receiver. And I've also heard Reese Vanderzee's looking really well.
Okay. I hope he's put on some weight.
And I think you said something about Seth Anderson's been on the field in pads, which is a plus.
Yeah. I was just going to say Seth Anderson is in pads and is participating. Now, the downside of this whole thing is that Jazzy and Patterson, Brevin Dahl have only been limited participation this spring, which is a little disturbing. But hopefully
I think more disturbing for Dahl than Patterson.
Yeah, I'd really like to see him out on the field in some some utility
together.
fashion. If he's if he's an end, if he's does the the end arounds, he's got blazing speed. So you'd love to see him get in the open field and see what he can do. So maybe they need to figure out ways to getting him the ball in open spaces and just let him do like Cooper DeJean type things.
Mm-hmm.
Let him, instincts that he has are probably really good, and he could probably just take a game and take a play and run it down and score a TD when you didn't think he would.
And I think, we've got Caden Weechin back there for punt returns and kick returns, but actually Caden was more of a punt returner, not a kick returner. So you could throw a doll back on the kick return team. I think a situation that would be really kind of cool would be if you had him and Weechin, because they're both lasers. And, let's say they kick the ball to Caden and you get that reverse on that kickoff with another guy with speed, he could be gone. That's something that's kind of exciting to me, is the options that you have with people like that.
Well, as you and I both know, they could have options and they could do special things, but Kirk Ferentz has never really been one to do
Flashy
things that
stuff.
are a little out of the box. He's just not. He's very risk adverse, like you said before on many times. I just don't see him running any kind of gimmick plays or trickery of any kind. He's just not that kind of guy. And, so I would assume that those would go in practice, but they'd probably never get in a game.
We might see a few of them on the offensive side, because I think that's where we're going to see some innovation with Tim Lester. But you're talking what LeVar Woods is this special teams coach. So I don't think, and he very much fits the mold of what Kirk Ferentz does. So he's probably not going to be too inventive there as far as trick plays or, the old Hayden Fry exotics. But I think they're open to it in the right situations. Obviously not going to see it in the first week at all. You're not going to see a whole lot of anything in the first week. You're just playing to get some reps in and shake the rust off and not show much, which at this point in time, Kirk Ferentz has been around for 26, 27 years. There's not much that he hasn't shown. So why not just go out there and just play the game like you do? You see other teams playing it where they're not afraid in that first week to go out there and do stuff that, I don't care if somebody else sees it. They still have to stop it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, Kirk, but everybody has seen your offense.
Yeah.
They've seen it for 27 years.
Yeah, even with
There's
Lester
not much
in
you're going
there.
to throw at them that's different.
Just
They wouldn't have
much.
seen before. So,
right.
But anyway, yeah, I agree.
Speaking of running backs, we lost the running back coach, Liddell Betts, to the NFL. I believe he's going to the New York Giants.
Yeah, that's painful to hear.
Well, with you being a Redskins fan.
Well, and him being a former Skin as well.
I won't say what they call them now, but because that's just stupid. So they went out and they got a man named Omar Young. He is an offensive assistant with New England. Before that, he was with Chicago Bears, an assistant focusing on quarterbacks and wide receivers. He's been with New England, Chicago, Green Bay, and Cleveland. He played defensive back for 2 years at Willamette University in Oregon. So we're gonna do our best to get to the game. We're going to report back to what we see when we get back on that. I think it's the 26th is the game. The 27th we'll probably do a pod, and we'll let you know what we see. We'll take notes. Hopefully it's not raining. If it's raining, that may throw a wrench into the works. Not a big want to sit in the rain kind of guy.
It's supposed to be fairly nice, though, I hear. At
Well,
least over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I just hope
After
it is
Wednesday.
nice. I hope it's in the mid 70s and nice, sunny.
But that would be nice.
You got anything else you want to add about spring football? Anything you've heard that I haven't said anything about?
There's a couple of players that just entered the transfer portal or are in the transfer portal that I think are going to be linked to Iowa. There's a cornerback out of Illinois State, was second team all
MVC
Valley Conference or whatever it was. 6'3", 205, I think is his size. He's a corner.
That's nice.
Pretty talented athlete. And then there's another kid from, I just saw it too. It is Ferris State, I believe.
Okay.
Division II Ferris State. Offensive lineman, 6'5", 310, 315, somewhere in there. That I think that Iowa's probably gonna look at. And outside of that, I have heard some very good things about Jaden Harrell in camp as well. And as a Hawkeye fan, and I encourage you to go out if you got access to any of the websites, go out and find the mic'd up version of Cohen Entriger.
I watched it today.
That is fantastic. That kid is, I love listening to him. It's just, it's an interesting take, and it's an interesting perspective on what goes on in practice. So
yeah, I watched that earlier today.
Worth your while. And I would say watch all the mic'd up. Those are all pretty good.
Yeah.
Last year's there was some really good ones there too.
Kind of gets you excited for football to get started. But
I agree.
Okay. Switching gears from football to basketball, men's basketball. Yeah. Today, fresh off the presses, Iowa received a commitment from a transfer portal player out of Kansas State, a 6'4" shooting guard named Brendan Sullivan. Now, he started 33 games for Kansas State, all 33 games for Kansas State this past season. He averaged 10.9 points on 39% free throw or field goal shooting, 38.8% three-pointers, and 82% from the line. So that is good to have a guy that can shoot a high percentage on the free throw line.
Yeah, the one stat that kind of, I don't know, I want to say it's a red flag, but I don't think it really is the 39% overall shooting, because it sounds like to me that his game might just be outside the three-point line, and that's it.
Yeah, I think...
And I'm a little worried about that part of it, just because I don't like to see having a player who is kind of like you saw in the girls' side, Taylor McCabe. She probably wasn't going to take a shot inside of the three-point line, so you really didn't have to guard her there as much. It's close. And I just kind of feel like that's one of those, like, I don't want him to be pigeonholed into just a three-point shooter. And that sounds like that's where he's been at K-State. Maybe that'll change under Ben McCollum. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, it sounded like he was primarily a three-point shooting guy. So not a lot of attempts inside the three-point line and a lot of attempts outside. And I'm not sure if I remember, I'm going to try to, I'll probably butcher this, but he had like 209 attempts from the three-point line and only 60 attempts from inside the three-point line when he was with Kansas State.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's kind of what, but we need somebody that's a sharpshooter. We got guys inside, the Cam Manyao and some of the other guys, Tavion Banks. They can patrol the inside decent. Drive and dish type of thing where you can get a guy open.
Yeah, I do want to see him get a little bit more size inside. I think, I don't want to have to rely on, 6'8", 6'9" guys to be our primary, shot blockers and rebounders. I'd like to get a guy in there that's, 6'10", 6'11", ironically.
Yeah, real quick though, he'll only have the 1 year of eligibility. Brandon Sullivan will only have the 1 year at Iowa. But we also got a commit from a high schooler today, or this last week. He's a high school 6'10" power forward / center from Valley High School in West Des Moines. He is also Iowa's Mr. Basketball for this season. Trevin Jurak. He's a kind of a project. Right. I think he's going to have limited minutes his freshman year. He's only going to play when he's absolutely needed. I think they'll work with him, and I think they'll turn him into a really good player by the time he's senior year. But right now he's kind of he's got to get worked on his footwork done. His shot's a little off outside of 10 feet, so they need to work on that a little bit. But hopefully he can be a rebounder and an intimidator, maybe not necessarily a shot blocker, but a 6'5" guard comes running in there. He's going to put up a shot, and he sees 6'10" in front of him with the arms raised. He may decide not to shoot inside and kick it back out, and we might have like a shot clock violation because of stuff like that. So,
from all the indications of things that I have heard and seen, If I was going to compare him to somebody athletically, I'd say Adam Woodbury.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, a little vertically challenged as far as his jumping, but I think Woodbury is still a good defensive player on the inside. And he's probably one of the better defensive players in the Fran McCaffrey era, ironically.
right. One other thing I did want to mention is I got another coach this week.
Yes.
His name is Luke Barnwell. He was a 2-year coach at Texas Tech. Rumor has it he's a really good coach, but he's an elite recruiter, and that's exactly what Iowa needs, is somebody to go out there and bring the kids in, and especially the quality ones, get them in, get them a quality education, number one, and turn them into basketball stars, number two.
And I think he was the guy that recruited JT Toppin from New Mexico.
He was, yes.
Yeah.
He worked very closely with him.
That's
over
a pretty
the
good
season.
pedigree right there, just having that guy.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I have for basketball. I just wanted to kind of keep people abreast on what's going on. I'm going to go off script here a little bit. Did you see what
hold on just a second.
Okay.
With Luke Barnwell, one of the things that might be very interesting is a name that'll be linked to him that just went in the transfer portal is Kevin Overton, who was at Drake 2 years ago and Texas Tech last year. I believe Barnwell was his coach at Sunshine Academy as well.
Yeah.
So good chance that he may have thought, hey, I'll follow coach wherever he goes type of thing. So my understanding, though, it sounds like he's going to probably command a little bit of this as well. So I don't know if that'll fit in the budget, but we'll see.
Well,
Hey,
NIL.
you were saying?
Speaking of NIL, did you see that quarterback down at Tennessee was wanting $4.5 million a year? And Tennessee said, well, hit the bricks, pal, because we're not paying you that.
Yeah, he was going to hold out. He didn't go into spring practice, is holding out because of that. And I'm like, this truly is the NFL and free agency.
Yeah. I don't think that when NIL was originally thought of and the kids worked for it, I'm not sure this is exactly what they were looking for. I think things, of course, with it being the Wild West, like we've talked about in the past, I think this is getting from out of hand to completely out of hand.
It's a runaway train right now.
And it's not going to stop. It's going to get worse, unfortunately. So, I don't know who's going to offer him the $4.5 million that he's asking for. I have a feeling he's not going to get that. Maybe from Alabama or Ohio State it's got deep pockets.
USC and Oregon were kind of linked to him, and they both pretty much laughed at him.
Yeah, $4.5 million.
I'm like, I don't care how good you are. No high school kid ever should make that much money at college level. Maybe, if he wants to be pro, if he's that good and he goes pro, then sure, absolutely.
But let him earn that $4.5 million in the pros.
We have our what am I saying? What am I trying to say? Opinions about the pay for play anyway. So I don't like it. I get it from a college athlete's perspective. If you're representing the university, you're promoting their brand, you should be compensated for that. But the NCAA really, really, really dropped the ball on this one. And had the opportunity before the lawsuit and everything to establish the ground rules of you cannot make over X amount. You do, that is a violation, and you are not eligible anymore. Now you're considered a pro.
I think they could still fix it, but I think they're too scared to try because they don't know what's going to open up.
The teams that are spending the money are the blue bloods, and they're not going to offend the blue bloods. Well, because those are your cash cows in your sports. Just like, the whole situation where Kansas was cheating and doing all this stuff with their shoe deals and all these representatives, and we're gonna crack the whip on this and we're gonna stop this stuff. And what happened to Kansas? They didn't even get penalized. Why? Because they're Kansas and they don't want to ruin the brand and have that be a black eye on the sport. And you can't do that to the blue bloods. So you wait until somebody who's not a blue blood that does it, and then you drop the hammer. That's what the NCAA does. They're too afraid to actually enforce the rules that they have on everybody.
Well, I've heard some far-fetched news about somebody in, I don't know if it was DC or House or Congress or something, talking about eliminating the NCAA altogether. I mean, what are they doing right now anyway?
Yeah.
Negotiating TV deals?
Really, no, because that's the conference.
Because that's the conference does that, yeah. Each conference president or CEO of the conference or whatever gets to go out and do all that. So really, I mean, what do you think the NCAA actually does? You know, they're not regulating the NIL. That's obvious. They're not scheduling games because that's the individual schools and the conferences that do that.
They're not really enforcing the rules.
Just tell me what they do.
They're arbitrarily enforcing the rules in situations where they want to. Oh, I use the Drew Ott situation, for example. Nope, we can't give him his extra year, but let's give this guy a 9th year over at Oregon.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Right.
So it's arbitrarily enforcing their own rules as how they see fit.
Yeah.
Well, Iowa pissed us off, so we're not going to do them any favors. This guy's from Iowa, but Oregon's a cash cow. Let's make sure that we get this guy through. We don't want to make them mad. That's where the NCAA is at. They are the lower man on the pole, getting controlled by whoever has the bucks.
Yeah. Well, I agree. That's a pretty good assessment of the situation as it sits. I don't know if there's anything that's going to happen. I hope something does happen and they get their little comeuppance and they realize what's really going on, because they're going to start losing viewership. People love the sport.
It would take an act of God.
Yeah, I know it would.
Change.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Off my high horse a little bit on that.
Speaking of acts of God, let's talk about God's sport, baseball.
Yes, Iowa baseball this week. They had a 3-1 week. Had a Tuesday win over Milwaukee University out of Wisconsin, 11-6. Then they had a win over Nebraska on Friday, 1-0 in Iowa City. These are all in Iowa City. They didn't travel this week at all. Saturday they also beat Nebraska 11-6. So they beat them on Friday 1-0, 11-6 on Saturday, but then lost the end of the triple header on Sunday 6-4. Right now, Iowa's 23-11 and 14-4, and in second place behind UCLA.
By virtue of the fact that UCLA barely played anybody in conference now. I mean, I shouldn't say barely, but they're like, they're 11-3. Iowa's played 4 more games, something like that,
I believe. I think Iowa 14-4, and they are 11-3.
They just played somebody out of the conference this last week, didn't they?
Well, they did play San Diego, but I thought they played Washington over the weekend and lost the first game and then won the other 2.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's right.
So next week on the schedule is they play Bradley on Wednesday, because usually they play Tuesday weekend and then Tuesday weekend. This time they're playing Wednesday. They're taking on Bradley in Iowa City. Then they go on the road Friday, Saturday, Sunday to Ann Arbor and take on the Wolverines. We're not having a great year.
But they did go 3-0 this last week. But I think they played Maryland, maybe. Whoever they played was not
high in the rankings.
No.
Kind of towards the bottom. So, get out to support the Hawkeyes on Wednesday. I know they had a big crowd over this last weekend with Nebraska. I think it was pretty much standing room only type stuff, from what I saw anyway. Help them get to the push to the end of the season, and they can get a pretty high seed and maybe make some noise and get into the big tournament and rock somebody's world and go deep into the tournament. They've got good pitching. The hitting's been there. They just, I think the fielding has been there. It's just
yesterday was untimely stuff happening.
Yeah,
untimely double plays that you got good scoring situations that you don't score because you get a weak grounder or something. That's not normal.
Yeah. And
they did give up quite a few dingers yesterday. And
Coach Heller's really done a good job this year with everything. And I think that this might be a season where if they continue on track like they've been, and they take care of business like they've been taking care of business, This might be one of those years that everybody talks about 10 years and 15 and 20 years from now. And they look back on the 2025 season and say, wow, hey, Iowa really had a good season that year. Hopefully it can continue it and then it just becomes a normal thing for Iowa baseball. But, that doesn't always happen. It's hard for the
northern teams to sustain stuff like that unless you're a dominant force for years. Like, I don't even know with the Big Ten who's been the dominant forces. I mean, I know Michigan's had some really, really good teams in there.
Minnesota used to be good.
Indiana's had a few really good teams in there too.
Rutgers won the conference 3 years ago, maybe.
But it's not as consistent as, like, say, Texas Tech or Texas always being near or at the top of their conference every year. At Arkansas, those types of teams that you just know every year they're going to be there. And it's harder for those northern teams because, frankly, it is a bit of a disadvantage weather-wise. You can't get out and be outside and doing things that everybody else is doing. And you've got to play your early seasons on the road and down in the South because of weather conditions as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a good advantage for the Southern teams. I got to play at home. I got to play my first month and a half at home regardless, or in my home area.
Against northern teams usually.
That haven't been outside yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway. I know that firsthand, so.
That's why I brought that up, because I knew you'd agree with me on that.
Been on 3 South trips, and we've gotten it handed to us a few times by teams that have been outside for weeks and weeks and weeks. Transition over to softball then and finish it up?
Yeah.
Okay, softball had a 3-1 week. They lost at home to Illinois State on Tuesday, 2-1 in 10 innings. And then Saturday, they went to College Park, Maryland, and Iowa swept a doubleheader, 6-1 and 9-0 in 5 innings. And then Sunday, Iowa completed the sweep of the 3-game set, 7-2. Next, they play on Tuesday against Iowa State in Ames. And then they have a 3-game set Saturday, Sunday, Monday versus Penn State in Iowa City. Softball team is 25-15 overall, 7-6 in the conference, and currently sits in 8th place. Which is,
and I think last week we had mentioned something about how many teams were in the conference for the softball side. I was pretty sure there wasn't 18. Ironically, I think the one team that I saw that wasn't in there was USC.
USC doesn't have a softball team?
I didn't see them in the Big Ten standings at all.
I'd be shocked by that.
I was shocked as well. And then I should have looked it up after that because I had it on my brain. Let me look it up real quick.
Okay. Yeah. We talked about baseball earlier, and I remember when I was going through college and maybe a few years after that, the USC was a pretty dominant team, and they made the World Series. Pretty much you could count on them being there about every year. Them and Texas, it seemed like, were always there. Texas Tech was good back in the day. Arkansas was really good. I saw Arkansas play against somebody when we were coming back from our South trip when I was a sophomore, I believe. And we stopped in there and watched them play. Pretty impressive team back then. But yeah.
USC does not have a softball team.
USC doesn't have a softball team. Shocking.
Based on what I'm seeing here,
they're not in the standings anywhere.
There's not even listed on their roster. There's no sport there for it.
Huh. Wonder why that is.
I don't know. Maybe it's a money situation. They had to drop it, like Iowa State with baseball.
All right. I would think USC's
I'm double checking.
It's got as much income as most people. With them being a blue blood in football, I'd think that they'd have enough money coming in that they would be able to support a softball team, but maybe not. Just like Wisconsin doesn't have a baseball team.
University of Southern California does not have a varsity softball team.
Huh. Okay, well, that makes scheduling the West Coast trips a little easier. You only have to go to UCLA, Washington, and Oregon then. Never have to worry about a USC trip. That's okay.
Yes, that's
also
that's kind of shocking.
It would be a nice place to go play, though, if you're, early in the year when it's cold here in Iowa and go out there Southern California and play. But you can still do that with UCLA, so I wouldn't worry too much about it.
And then maybe that's why UCLA is so good, is because USC doesn't have a team anymore. All those players that would have gone to USC probably going to UCLA now, or if they want to stay close.
Yeah. Just like Iowa, in baseball, only one team in Iowa. There's no Iowa State. There's no UNI. There's no Drake. If you're an Iowa or baseball player in the state of Iowa, of course, we do things differently. We have summer baseball where most states have spring. I
did not know this.
Yeah, I didn't know it either.
I'll read this to you real quick. University of Southern California does not have a varsity softball team primarily due to budgetary constraints and decisions regarding the allocation of resources for its athletic programs. In 1980, USC eliminated its women's softball program as part of a broader cut to its athletics fund. So they haven't had one since 1980.
Geez, 45 years?
They do have a softball team. It's a student-run softball team, and it's not a varsity team. It's not regulated by the university, but they do have a student-run softball team. So maybe they're out playing like intramural type stuff, but they do not have official participation in the conference or an official team with the university. I did not know that, and that blew my mind.
You learn something new every day. So,
and I'm sure the people that, if you're out in California and listen to us, probably thinking we're crazy because you've known it forever. But I would have just assumed.
If you're still listening and still watching at this point, why don't you leave a comment and say you didn't know it either? Or, yeah, I knew that. That's old news because I didn't know it. You didn't know it. And I'm sure if you went down the road and asked people, did you know, how's USC softball team doing? And they wouldn't know because they didn't know they didn't have a team.
They would probably assume they're top 25 just because of traditions. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
All right. Anything else you got for softball?
Nope, I don't have anything else for softball. Next week's games at Iowa State and Penn State and Iowa City for a 3-game set. Other than that, that's really all I have.
All right. I don't have anything else on softball. I don't have anything else on any of the other sports. I think we covered most of it this week. If you like the content you're hearing here, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, give us a thumbs up, make sure you comment on stuff. Through that question of the week in the beginning of the show now, just in case some people aren't listening all the way through. If you get to the, maybe you're the type of person that gets to the baseball and softball stuff and you're not interested in it, so you stop listening. That's fine. I mean, listen to what you want to listen to on it and tell us what you like. But getting that question of the week in there early is probably a better idea to get better participation on it, guys. So feel free to drop us that. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Spotify. For some reason, I'm locked out of TikTok on posting, so I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if I violated their terms of something. I can't think I did because I'm posting sections of this, and that's the only thing I post on TikTok. So I'll have to see if I can't figure out why that's not happening. But otherwise, we'll be back on there as well. But and we also have the YouTube Shorts if you're just wanting to hear little snippets. If you want to hear more of the little snippets, let me know. I can certainly put more of them out. I just try to pick some of what I think are some of the better key moments of the show, or sometimes more controversial moments of the show too. Who knows? Just whatever strikes me that week. So, all right, that's merch store. Still have that. If you're interested in buying anything that proceeds go to the Swarm, help us. Yeah,
I didn't know you were going to wear that.
I was thinking about going out earlier today, and then I didn't end up going anywhere, so I was going to make sure I had it on when I went out and about.
Yeah, yesterday was really nice outside. I got a lot of stuff done outside. In fact, I'm taking Tylenol because I got too much stuff done, and I'm really sore. But today was, 60, 61, but had that northwest wind blowing, and it really wasn't that nice out today. I mean, compared, I guess, to yesterday.
It's supposed to warm back up on Wednesday, from what I hear.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think we have some potential for some really nasty weather come Friday up.
You mean
tornado,
rain?
hail, stuff like that.
Yeah. I don't mind the rain, but you can keep that hail and tornado stuff. That's not good for anybody.
Well, that's all I've got. I want to wish everybody a happy Easter going into this week. If get your family together and celebrate and enjoy the time together. Baseball, Major League Baseball is really starting to get into full gear now. So if you're a Major League Baseball fan, enjoy that as well. Now that the main sports at the University of Iowa are completed, we'll start getting a little bit into maybe some different stuff as far as predictions for next year. Or I do have a game that I want to play here in the next couple of weeks. Name that team. I want to see how well we can do with that. So we'll try to do a little bit of fun stuff in here every once in a while. Maybe eventually we'll get into that whole discussion about NIL and give my real true thoughts on it. So, and how I think it could be fixed.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. That's all I got. We'll round it off with a Go Hawks and get out of here. So,
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.